In this talk, I like to share my thoughts on forced distribution. By now, it must be clear to all that forced distribution in performance ratings or in performance appraisals is a very disastrous way of appraising performance. We long ago, almost about 45 years ago, suggested that performance appraisals should be delinked with rewards and incentives. We didn't say performance should be delinked, we said appraisals. This is because we understand the pitfalls in appraisals. Appraisals, long ago we realized, are likely to be subjective. As long as people assess other people, there is going to be a certain amount of subjectivity. Appraisals is nothing but assigning numbers to a set of people on the basis of a preset kind of criteria. These criteria may be KRAs, these criteria may be qualities or competencies, whatever you may call it. These are preset, and even if you come up with a behaviorally anchored rating scale, identified indicators, and you have done a lot of work, all that it does is to bring a little less of subjectivity and a little more of objectivity into the appraisal system. In order to understand the pitfalls in terms of assigning numbers to individuals after a full years of work can be better understood if we look at the science of numbers. Assigning numbers means scaling an individual or a quality or a KRA or a task or a target. And there are 4 types of scales which we know in our life. The first scale is called nominal scale. When you name an object, when you name that something exists, you have already scaled. Anything that exists in certain quantity. But the moment you say something is existing, then you have already scaled it. This is called naming. It's a nominal scale. Like your passport number is a nominal scale. It exists. There is a number. It is assigned. Your house number is a nominal scale. Your number plate of the car is a nominal scale. These are simply names. They don't indicate any sequence at all. It's a very primitive and crude way of identifying that something exists. It's a very preliminary scale. The second type of scales are called as ordinal scales. Ordinal scales order the objects or people or qualities in some kind of an ascending or descending order. These are ranks, assigning ranks to any particular entity or any particular quantity. I think the classic example is the assignment of class ranks after declaring the results in a school or a college. So there is a first ranker who gets 99% in a particular subject. Second ranker, he need not get 98, he could have got only 87%. Third ranker may be farther below, 85%. Fourth ranker may be 80%. Fifth ranker may be even less. So the ranks only indicate an order in which the people have obtained ranks. Or when I was young, quite often for dividing us into groups uh, in the drill class, sports class, they used to ask us to stand according to our height. So if you see us standing according to height, you will find very interesting. The tallest fellow and the next tall fellow are quite apart. Whereas after some time, you will find the difference between a taller one and a little less taller one is not the same. I used to be one of the shortest fellows, and my neighbor always used to be almost about 2 to 3 inches taller than me, whereas his neighbor may be half an inch taller than him and so on. So ordinal scales only indicate the order of the individual, but don't indicate how much of a difference exists between any two individuals. For example, the first ranker is 95%, second ranker may be 90, third ranker is 89. So the difference between first and second ranker and the second and third ranker does not follow any particular rule. So you cannot add in this, you can't multiply, you simply only order, like first bond, second bond, third bond, and things like that. You can't multiply because you can't add 1 plus 2 is equal to 3 and things of that kind. So these are not as primitive as your house number or a number place or passport number or Aadhaar card number, but these are a little more indicating the uh, the ordinal position of the individual in relation to birth or quantity or height or weight or anything of that kind. These are little less primitive, but again are not subject to addition and multiplication. And we have the third kind of scales, which are called as interval scales. Interval scales are the scales where the difference between any two consecutive numbers is equal to the difference between any two other consecutive numbers anywhere on the scale. For example, look at the weights. The difference between 10 kilo and 11 kilo is 1 kilo. And the same way, the difference between 150 kilos and 151 kilos is 1 kilo. 49 kilos, 50 kilos is 1 kilo. Anywhere on the continuum, whatever is the magnitude, the difference between two consecutive numbers remains the same. Same way, if you look at height, the difference between, in terms of height, 5 feet 6 inches and 5 feet 5 inches is 1 inch. And the difference between 3 feet 2 inches and 3 feet 1 inch is also 1 inch. So wherever you measure, the difference between any two consecutive numbers is the same. And in this kind of a measurement, we therefore say that the numbers are additive. 1 kilo plus another kilo is equal to 2 kilos. 3 plus 2 kilos is 5 kilos. 3 inches plus 2 inches is equal to 5 inches. They can be subtracted, they can be multiplied, they can be added. This is what is called as equal appearing intervals or interval scale. Now you have the fourth category of scaling, which is called as ratio scale. They follow very sophisticated rules, and even I have not understood what is the sophisticated rules they follow. The easiest example that we give is the temperature. For example, the difference between 104 degrees of temperature and 105 degrees is not the same as 98 degrees and 99 degrees. When you get fever, if you get 98, 99 doesn't make you are not alarmed. But if you move from 104 to 105, you're very upset and you shake the entire world and you think that you are in a crisis and so on. Or the difference between 99 degrees and 100 degrees, I think evaporation point. Or 0 degree and minus 1 degree, I think is a freezing kind of a point. So the temperature does not follow interval scale principle, it follows something else. Now this scale, which is called as a ratio scales, need very sophisticated understanding of life. I mean, this is what is used in going to space, reaching the moon and so on, because all those calculations are made and that is the way they find this particular thing out. Now friends, consider therefore these four scales: nominal scales, ordinal scales, interval scales, and ratio scales. Which of the scales are you using when you give a KRA to an individual that he should get maximum number of customers, and you tell somebody that this particular month you should get 15 customers, and then somebody else got 14 customers. The performance of the fellow who got 15 customers and the fellow who got 14 customers, can they be equated as a fellow, the difference between a fellow who got 2 customers and then another fellow who got 3 customers? The difference is only 1 customer between 2 and 3. Between 14 and 15 also there is 1. But we don't know the effort that has been put in. We don't know what is the nature of customers. So we simply treat by putting a number 2 and 3 or 14 and 15, and we say the fellow who has got 15 customers is better than the fellow who got 14 customers, or the fellow who got 3 customers is worse than the fellow who got 4 customers, without going into details of what is the nature of the customer, what is the revenue earned, how much loyalty we have, how much is more customers the other person is likely to get. But even if you are able to get answers for all of these, you cannot reduce into an interval scale and always say a 5 is better than 4 and 4 is better than 3. So you cannot. But in executive appraisals, we are pretending when you rate at the end of the year this person's initiative level is only 4 out of 5 or 3.5 out of 5, and another fellow is 4 out of 5, you cannot always say that 4 is better than 3.5. This also happens especially when two different people assess. When one person assesses X, he is using a mental scale of his own making. Another fellow assessing Y using a totally different kind of a scale. So there are no standardized scales, and they are not interval scales. They are only subjective measures of placing an individual in your own mindset. So when you put such numbers and sit in a performance appraisal situation, add up all the KRAs and weightages and all of them for an individual, and conclude this individual got 77 score, and he is much better than the fellow who got an 80 score, and therefore a person who got 80 is a A star, and the person who got 77 is only an A, not knowing the kind of person who assessed the one who got 80 and the kind of the person who assessed who got 77. Maybe the fellow who assessed 77 is a highly strict fellow. He has never given anything more than 75 in his life, but he thought this is an extraordinarily good fellow and gave 77. Whereas another fellow who assessed somebody else as 80 may not have given anybody in his life anything less than 80. Always he has given him 90s, but he felt that this particular person is one of the bottom ones and still 80. But when both these scores come to the personal department, they have no clue about the conditions under which they have been assessed, and they end up equating and saying 87 or 80 is better than 77, and therefore we incentivize the 80 fellow because he is a A-star performer. What a mistake that we have made. And this is what has been happening in forced distribution in performance appraisals. You have compared the uncomparable. You have put apples, bananas, oranges, and all kinds of fruits into one basket, and you said 4 bananas is better than 3 apples, which are better than 2 oranges, and so on. And that is how our forced distributions are made. And that is why there is a disaster. As soon as forced distributions are announced and people are incentivized, we discovered there is more dissatisfaction among executives than satisfaction. So I believe that every time you identified 15 to 20% as super performers or high performers, extraordinary performers, or outstanding performers, and gave them incentives, you lost 80% of the people who were also aspiring and thinking that they are high performers, but they were communicated as not a high performer, and they almost take, if you are not in the top 20 category, you are an average performer. So the consequence of using forced distribution is discouraging many people, killing the motivation of a few people in order to make 20% outstanding. And often the experience is these 20% who are rated as outstanding stop getting cooperation from the 80% who are rated as average managers. And the average managers start saying, let me see how you can be outstanding next time. You can't be outstanding without me. So it's a very ridiculous kind of an argument that we have made. Executive performance is not easily quantifiable. What is important is to have a kind of an agreement in the beginning of the year on the basis of the circumstances the individual is facing, and put it if necessary on a piece of paper, periodically seeing how well the particular person is doing, and motivating, pushing the individual to do better than the previous day and better than the previous day, and push the person to give his maximum and frequently giving him positive kind of strokes, so that at the end of the day he feels that he has accomplished and made a difference. So I am against forced distribution, and I hope if you are following it, it is high time that you discontinue and understand the fallacies you are committing in scaling performance of executives.